maybe you could give kind of a short explanation for what James 2 is talking about on the relationship of works and faith.
Okay, we'll do the elevator speech. Elevator speech on this. In verse 14 of chapter 2, he says, if a man says he has faith, but he has no works, can that faith save him? Now, there's two words there used that we need to define. One is faith, and the other is saved. And what do they mean for James? This is easy to figure out. All you have to do is get out of concordance and look up every instance of faith in the book of James. Because it can be construed in two different ways. One is faith means the initial transaction by which you trust Christ for salvation and are justified. But the other way faith is used in the Bible is as a walk of faith, living the Christian life. And if you look up those verses in James where faith is used, pistuo, the verb, pistis, the noun, it always refers to a walk of faith. So when James talks about can that faith save him, he's talking about can that walk of faith. There were people there saying, well, let's look at the word saved. You can look up all those verses. Every time the word saved is used, sozo or soteria, the noun in the book of James, it never means deliverance from hell. For example, in James 5, it means to be healed. In James 1, it means to be saved from that downward spiral of temptation, lust, sin, and death, meaning spiritual and psychological ruin, or possibly the sin unto death. And in James 5, it does refer to the sin unto death, physical death. So the question here for James is not whether these people are saved. In fact, he says they hold their faith. They have faith in the Lord Jesus Christ. He addresses them as believers, my children, brothers. But their problem is that they were not living the Christian life. They were not walking by faith, and hence they couldn't be saved from the temporal consequences of sin, that is the sin unto death or the downward spiral into spiritual and psychological ruin described in James chapter 1. So those key words, faith and save, are critical for understanding. And then he says later that faith without works is dead. And the Greek word, as you pointed out, means useless. Well, useless for what? For getting you into heaven? No. James defines what he's talking about in the preceding verse. It's useless for getting a favorable report when judged by the law of liberty in just the preceding verses in James 2:12 and 13. So it's talking about you'll have nothing to commend yourself for honor at the judgment seat of Christ. It's utterly useless for that. But he also means it's utterly useless in meeting the needs of people who have needs. It's a pointless faith. It's a useless faith. In fact, he says earlier that true religion is to, I forgot the exact wording, it's chapter 1, is to help the orphan and the widow and that kind of thing. So that's what he's talking about. Save those kind of people from temporal ruin as well as save yourself from temporal destruction.
I do want to ask, as it's related to faith and works and believing, when it says that the devils believe and they tremble, what would be the difference there if that's in the same category of a relationship of faith to works compared to the devil's belief in faith and works, if that's even a part of the conversation?
Oh, it definitely is. James is addressing an objector, a person who doesn't feel that a walk of faith is necessary in order to go to be saved from these temporal consequences. And James's response is, that's ridiculous. You're saying all you have to do is believe in God is kind of an intellectual acceptance of the Shema. The Lord our God is one, if he's a Jew. But that won't do you any good at all for escaping the kind of salvation, the kind of danger that James is talking about, namely the sin unto death or spiritual ruin or a dishonorable report at the judgment seat of Christ. So James says, look, that kind of faith means nothing. The demons believe that God is God. They believe in one God. It takes a lot more than that. It takes a walk of faith to get out of this stuff, not just a one-time belief in that there is a God. Yeah. So he's just saying so James says, you foolish man.